This is quite simple solar energy in this solar dryer because it is completely passive. It doesn't have any fans, any special equipment, any reflectors or anything. All it is a clear sheet on the top, and inside it you can see what happens. At the moment I've got drying in here some hazelnuts which I picked up off the lane the other day. That sits on top of a whole lot of gravel which is on a high shelf. That gravel has the ability to absorb some temperature and release some temperature slowly. That eliminates, or virtually eliminates, any condensation on the top of the sheeting or on the bottom of the sheeting underneath here. So this top sheeting absorbs the moisture, absorbs the solar energy. The crucial thing with a unit like this is that it should have a lot of ventilation. Lots of air can come in at the bottom, travel up through this unit here, drying things as it goes. When it gets to the top, it can exit very clearly and very easily. So every day with clear sun produces enough moisture removing airflow to dry out whatever is inside it, and obviously it gets significantly warmer just inside as well, which helps to dry everything out. At the moment, as I said, I've got some hazelnuts which I've picked up in the lane. I put them into trays like this. These are single-use plastic trays which are used in the catering trade to transport and deliver mushrooms. Large numbers of shops and restaurants will have these trays, and all they do normally is just throw them away. But they are actually ideal for storing and drying things like this. Lots of air, lots of holes. I store apples in them. They are multi-purpose. The gravel which is in there, which I talked about earlier, there's about 50 kilos in there. That will absorb a significant amount of heat. What it's called normally is thermal storage, thermal capacity. There are various terms used to describe it, but it is important whenever you're talking about any solar heated unit that the thermal capacity of that place is high. All we do is put things in here. I've got the hazelnuts down here and the onions are up at the top. Just close them up. They stay in here for somewhere in the region of 3 weeks. During that time there's usually been several sunny days, and at the end of that period they'll be bone dry, ready for storage. We've had a look at various ways of using solar energy, and as I indicated before, raised beds within a greenhouse are an excellent heat store. But another way that you can do it, especially in a smaller domestic sized greenhouse, is with water. Water stores a huge amount of solar energy. Its thermal capacity is very, very high. So that's one other advantage. We've talked about the advantage of having the barrel inside the greenhouse before, because you're able to put slightly warmed water onto your young plants in the spring. But another huge advantage of having the barrel inside the greenhouse, especially with a smaller greenhouse, is the fact that the thermal capacity is so high. What this does is, again, it will heat up by only perhaps a few degrees during the day, and then during the night and late at night in the early hours, it is very slowly giving off that heat. Also, if it gets really cold in a greenhouse, it will tend to absorb a lot of that coldness as well once its heat has been given off. So that is partly important to protect your plants. The plants which are actually in containers are much more liable to get problems with very cold weather. That's why it's very important, particularly with containers, and that includes raised beds. It's very important to have good drainage, because although plants can tolerate perfectly happily temperatures down to 0 or even less, they can't tolerate those sorts of temperatures as well if their toes are in water. Could you? Could you quite seriously sit there with your toes inside freezing water? I doubt it. Plants are exactly the same. They don't like their toes in ice either. This is my potting greenhouse. I use it for mixing up our homemade composts, sometimes with some sharp sand, sometimes with a small amount of bought-in organic compost. But we also grow some perennial plants in here. These are called physalis, and they produce quite a lot of really nice fruit about this time of the year. But the main reason we're in here this afternoon, when we're talking simple solar, is the fact that this greenhouse come potting shed is built on a steep slope. Now, on a steep slope, the same system with loose laid blocks will not work. If you look at this wall here, this is concrete blocks laid with a proper foundation underneath, concrete foundation, and the bed behind would be too much weight for loose laid blocks. Once you get above about 60 centimetres, maybe a little bit more, 70 centimetres, then you would not be able to have them loose laid, because the weight behind would effectively push them out. So you have to take extra precautions on a steep slope as this greenhouse is built on. But one of the biggest pluses of a wall like this, and on this side behind me is the south side, this wall has huge thermal capacity. The concrete and the mortar used to build this wall will store several kilowatt hours of heat, so that in a clear winter's day with the sun coming in from the south for that important 4 hours in the middle of the day, it will fall directly onto these blocks. They will warm up, again maybe only by 3 or 4 degrees during a warm day, maybe up to 5 or 6 degrees, but because the thermal capacity is so high, including the soil behind, that warmth is given off very gradually during the following night. Normally, if you've got a clear day in the winter, that will be the time when you will also get frost. Clouds tend to insulate, and therefore following a cloudy day, unless the sky clears very rapidly in the evening, following a cloudy day you very rarely get a frost. Now, most plants like a temperature of 7 degrees C or slightly or a bit more for growth to get going properly. They don't mind being fairly cold at night, or certainly quite chilly at night, and I've already said about the importance of having good drainage for this type of situation. But this is a way in which solar storage with simple solar works just as effectively in a greenhouse as it can do on any other scale. We've talked today mostly about methods of using energy, solar energy, in the very simple methods, and it is perfectly true that these methods could be scaled up perfectly well to heat, winter heat, virtually every property in the UK. It's not difficult to do it, It's just a question of deciding that that's what you're going to do. If you choose to waste your money on other things and not look at what is happening in the world, that's your choice. But at the moment, in my view, it's much more important to use simple solar energy and other simple forms of energy to scale up, not only to produce heat, to produce hot water for domestic use, lots of other ways. One word of caution here: it's very easy to listen to what a salesman says, but bear in mind, the salesman is trying to get you to buy the most sophisticated and therefore most expensive piece of kit. Very often, a small conservatory on the south side of a house, costing a fair bit less money than a photovoltaic array, will actually save you significantly more money than buying that photovoltaic array. So get your small conservatory done first, then when you've saved money for a year or two, then go into photovoltaics. But we will talk about the photovoltaics in some detail either next time or the time after, so coming up soon. It's about time I picked these. This is a later variety of apple. As you can see, a cracking good size. That one is going to probably be for my breakfast tomorrow morning. The earlier varieties have already been harvested. These are a slightly later variety, so they will keep quite well until about February. And different varieties of apple keep for different lengths of time. So you need to be aware of the type that you've got.